We are reading chapter 5 called Lightfoot, and this chapter is dedicated to Ruby. The moment of pain was brief but intense. When it faded, a tingling spread over Kara's skin, as if she were being shocked by 1,000 tiny batteries. The unicorn stepped back in surprise. Kara looked down at her chest. The fabric of her shirt was torn where the horn had pierced Yet the flesh beneath was unbroken, bloodless, the only sign of what had just happened, a tiny star-shaped scar. The unicorn laid his horn gently upon her shoulder. Then, to her astonishment, he spoke to her. "I see I am not the first of my kind that you have met. Alas, you have a wound that not even I can heal." The puzzling message came not in words, as Kara knew them, sounds made in the throat and carried on the air. Instead, the silvery creature spoke inside her head, his meaning carried to her in a strange internal combination of images, sounds, and feelings, even smells, that she could not have explained, yet that was so perfectly clear she understood even the note of surprise that underlay his thought. "I'm not going to hurt you," he added. "I just wanted to make it possible to communicate with you. It will be easier for me to heal you if we can speak." "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to keep her voice from quavering. "Don't speak out loud. I can't understand you that way. Just form the thought and send it to me. You'll need to stay in contact with me, at least for now." Though the horn was already resting on her shoulder, she gingerly set her hand on it for good measure. It was as smooth as the inside of an oyster shell, and pleasantly warm. "Where am I?" she asked. She sensed him receiving the message. "I'm talking to a unicorn," she thought, so excited she almost missed the answer. "You are in the cave of a Dimplethumb," he told her, "in the forest of the Queen, on the edge of the wild, in the world of Luster." Luster? The home of the unicorns. For a moment, Kara felt as if she could not think at all. Then the questions came in a flood. "What has happened to me? Who are you? Who is the creature that lives in this cave? How can I get home? Do you know where my grandmother is? Why did you—" Wait, interrupted the unicorn. "I can't possibly answer all those at once. Let's start with some of the easier ones. My name is Lightfoot. And yours?" "Kara." "What has brought you here, Kara? Very few humans can cross the borders of Luster these days." He paused and looked at her oddly and repeated, "Very few." This time the underlying tone of his message was not surprise, but concern. She started to tell her story, but found herself lapsing to speech without realizing it. She started again. It was surprisingly hard to only think what she wanted to tell him and not to say it aloud. "You'll get better at it," he said reassuringly. "Try again." Concentrating, she managed to get through the whole story without slipping to speech more than 3 or 4 times. The unicorn looked startled and somewhat worried when she mentioned her grandmother's request that she find the old one. "What's the matter?" she asked. "Nothing," he replied. "Go on with your story." She looked at him suspiciously, but continued the tale. When she was done, he said, "This is more serious than I realized when the Dimplethumb came to me." "The Dimplethumb?" "Your host and your rescuer. You're resting in his bed right now. He's a gruff beast and generally a loner, so he is somewhat disturbed at having you here, though to tell you the truth, I think he rather likes you. It's good for him, if you ask me. Shake him up a bit." "Where is he now?" "Gathering some herbs to help you regain your strength. I can heal any serious wounds that you might have suffered when you were attacked, but recovery involves more than just healing. Crossing from your world to Luster probably took its toll on you as well. You'll need to rest for a few days. As to the healing, do you have specific wounds I can tend to?" In the excitement of meeting the unicorn, she had nearly forgotten the pain in her side, but his question reminded her of her wound, and at once she felt it stab through her. "Here," she said, pointing. She realized that she should have thought it rather than say it, but the pointing got the message across. Lightfoot stepped back. Returning his horn to her shoulder, he thought, "Show me." She pulled up her shirt. The raw wound underneath was so ugly it made her gasp to see it. The pain suddenly increased, as if her being aware of the injury somehow made it worse. Leifer turned his head to get a better look at the problem. Whatever he thought of it, the information did not reach Kara because she was no longer in contact with him. After a moment, he turned his head back and placed his horn on the wound. She cried out at the flash of pain that accompanied the healing. Then the flesh drew together and all pain vanished. "You fixed it," she cried in delight. He nodded, but turned away from her. He took 3 steps. Then, to her horror, his legs buckled and he crumpled to the floor of the cave. "Are you all right?" she cried. Realizing he could neither understand nor answer her, she threw aside the covers and stood. Instantly, she fell back to the bed. Closing her eyes, she took a deep breath, then slid to the floor. She made her way to the unicorn on her hands and knees. Placing one hand on his silky flank, she repeated desperately, "Are you all right?" She had barely formed the question before he was reassuring her. "Sorry, I should have warned you. A healing takes a great deal out of me, and this healing was more complicated than I expected." "Why is that?" She felt worried. He hesitated and said, "You have an old wound, very deep. It is a wound of the spirit, not the flesh, and not something that can be quickly cured, even by the power of my horn." She flinched and drew back her hand from him. A lump of unexpected pain lodged itself in her throat. The unicorn waited a moment, then leaned against her. "I do not know the source of your wound," he said gently. "I cannot read your mind. I only understand what you send me." "I want to rest now," she responded, her voice sharper than she intended. She started to crawl back toward the bed, then thought better of it. Moving closer to Lightfoot, she lay her head on his side and sighed. The loss of her parents was something she did not talk about. Never. Not with anyone. With a skill born of long practice, she pushed her secret sorrows to the back of her mind and slept. She was woken by something pulling at her hair. Before she could force her eyes open, she heard Lightfoot whicker. A small voice chattered in indigent reply. Now she did manage to open her eyes. Crouching near her was a creature just over a foot high. It looked like a cross between a monkey and a squirrel. It had thick fur that grew in 2 shades of gray, dark on its head and back, lighter on its face and limbs and stomach. Its bushy tail flicked back and forth as it stared at her from enormous eyes that seemed much too large for his face. Those eyes, dark with bright blue pupils, were lively and intelligent. Kara was accustomed to small animals being timid around humans, so she was startled when the gray creature skittered up to her face. Extending a 3-fingered hand, it touched her cheek, then rubbed it with its thumb. "Don't be frightened," Lightfoot told her. "He's harmless. Annoying, but harmless." "What? Who is he?" she thought. "The Squeegum." Kara reached toward the little creature. When her hand made contact with him, he blinked, but did not run. His fur was soft and warm. "The Squeegum?" she thought to Lightfoot. "Does that mean he's the only one?" "As far as I know." "If he's the only one, where did he come from?" "I don't have the slightest idea," replied the unicorn, "and I'm sure I don't care," he added pointedly. The Squeegum turned his head and chittered at Lightfoot. Even without her connection to Lightfoot, his indignation would have been clear to Kara. With the connection, she understood him to be saying something along the lines of, "Mean hornhead, not love good Squeegum, fooey bad hocha." Lightfoot snorted in response. Suddenly a shadow stretched over them. With a screech from the Squeegum scrambled over Kara's side and cowered behind her. Kara turned to look over her shoulder. For a moment her heart leapt in horror. Almost as quickly, she felt a surge of relief. The creature standing at the entrance of the cave was the one she had seen the first time she woke there, the Dimblethumb. She wondered if he, too, was the only one of his kind. He appeared to be smiling, though it wasn't easy to tell, given his bear-like face. Holding up a big furry paw, he said, "The Dimblethumb has something that belongs to you."